What is going on, everybody? ProMaster69 here. Welcome back to another video, and today I'm bringing you guys Yakuza Kiwami gameplay. But this video will be more of a discussion video and more commentary. So sorry that there's no sound to the game. I do not want sound to the game. I'm just gonna have music playing over this. But basically, today's video, I will be talking about my Yakuza tier list video. Now, in that video, I talked heavily about when I got to certain games, Yakuza Kiwami. That's why I'm playing Yakuza Kiwami right now, because I'm going to be talking a lot about Yakuza Kiwami. And also Majima and Yakuza 3. I would just like to address a few things on that stuff, but this is mainly just a discussion. But before this video starts, there will be spoilers in this video, and this is heavily opinion based, so please don't get mad at me. I'm only trying to address certain things. And one thing I would like to get off my chest is, if you guys watched my Yakuza tier list video, you will know what I said about Yakuza Kiwami. And if you didn't, here's the clip.
It's going to be lower than 5. Yakuza Kiwami sucks. It's just Yakuza 0, just with the story of Yakuza 1. Yakuza Kiwami, it looks just like Yakuza 0. It plays just like Yakuza 0 because it has all the same fighting styles. But the fighting in Yakuza Kiwami, even though it's the same as 0, it is a lot better in Yakuza Kiwami. It's a lot faster. Oh my god, a lot easier to use.
Now that you saw that, you see that I was very like, I wasn't very good with my explaining on it. All I really said was the game was awful. It felt like a copy paste of Yakuza 0, and the game just outright wasn't that good. Now, I would like to correct myself on that on many things. Yakuza Kiwami is not a bad game, and I will admit that. Yakuza Kiwami is easily one of the best in the series, this game being my number 5. This game is extraordinarily good in terms of gameplay, in terms of how it looks, and in terms of story. The story for this game is extremely well done, and I love this game's story. And I love this game's story on terms of not Yakuza, like Yakuza in-game Yakuza, but I mean like in terms of like real-life Yakuza. Because in real-life Yakuza, there are sworn brothers, and in this game, the main character, his sworn brother, becomes the antagonist. And I find that very interesting, to be as a main antagonist, to be a main character sworn brother that he's known basically since childhood. And I really like that idea. That's a really great idea, and that's what really gives Nishiki a lot of points with me in this game, because my actual original opinion with this game was that I actually did not like this game at all. I thought it was okay, but I honestly really just felt like I was playing Yakuza 0 again. And I said that for all the right reasons. Number one, this game feels a lot like Yakuza 0. It plays a lot like Yakuza 0, and it looks a lot like Yakuza 0. Basically, my vision for this game was, it was Yakuza 0, but with Yakuza 1 story, right? Because this game, it feels extremely like a huge copy paste, and at some points it is. But with that being said, this game also excels to be its own game and not just Yakuza 0 plus DLC, like how some people say Gen 2 for Pokemon feels like Kanto DLC. Like, I'm not saying this game feels like, Yakuza 0 DLC, because it doesn't. This game is in its own self. It's its own game. It has its own story, has its own way of playing, and it's by far an extremely fun game. Out of all the Yakuza games, this is probably my second favorite to play in terms of gameplay, because this game's gameplay is by far astounding and just easily the best. It is fast, it is fluent, the speed you can just throw combos around in is glorious, and how you can switch easily through fighting style to fighting style. And I find the upgrading system in this game very well made. And if it wasn't for Yakuza Kiwami, and its fighting and its anything, I probably would have dropped the Yakuza series. Um, I love this game's fighting. I love this game's upgrading system, and I did a poll once between all the upgrading systems, and the fan favorite to me seemed to be Yakuza Zero's. In my opinion, Yakuza Zero's upgrading is actually probably the worst in the entire series, only because it costs money. But with that being said, I understand that Yakuza Zero's thing is money. I get that. But with the upgrades being so costly, they cost so much money, and you have to grind for that money. That's probably why they also included the 2 minigames for Majima and Kiryu, being the cabaret minigame for Majima and the real estate minigame for Kiryu. Now, that all makes perfect sense, and I understand that. Make easy money. For cabaret, it is really easy to make really big money from the start, actually. For real estate, it does take a while because it's completely different. It's not as fast paced as cabaret, and it takes time to get, all that money and all those upgrades and maxing out everything. Now, in Yakuza Kiwami, the upgrading system is fantastic. I love the upgrading system in this game. It's extremely well done, and I love it very much. Now, with all that said, it's clearly plain to see that this game is a lot better than Yakuza 0 in terms of gameplay by 1,000, because in Yakuza 0, the fighting was extremely... It was good, and it was experimental, it's what it is, because it introduced the multiple fighting styles, since it was the starting point for our main main protagonist, Kiryu and Majima. Now, with all that being said, the fighting in that game was, depending on the speed, since all the games prior, you would always have to buy upgrades for combats, for combo speed. Now, in games like Yakuza 0, the combos were mainly based around heat. Heat was a major thing in Yakuza 0, being for heat actions and being for faster combat. The more heat you had, the more combo speed you would have, and the more faster you would do combos. Now, that all was good, but that was also a huge setback in Yakuza 0, especially for fast fighting styles like Rush. Rush is an extremely bad fighting style in Yakuza 0. For that reason alone, it being extremely slow to use, that means it's not really that easy to get the hang of, because while you're slow trying to build up heat, you will be getting hit by people fast, and they won't be taking as much damage, and you'll be getting hit just having to restart your combo. And every time you get hit, you lose heat, so that's also really annoying. But that's not that's not necessarily per se a horrible thing, because I understand it was an experiment thing, but they do it so much better in Yakuza Kiwami. Rush everything has a set speed for how much heat you have. If you have a lot of heat, then you'll practically do the same amount of speed in a combo that you already did when you didn't have it, which I really like, especially with Rush. This game, when it comes to the Rush fighting style, is amazing. Rush fighting style in this game is phenomenal. I love using it every time. Actually, when I replayed this game on PC, all I used was Rush, basically. Rush was an amazing fighting style, and it was extremely fast, and it was fluent, and you can just switch. And also another thing that really helped this game's fighting, for me, was the upgrades, where you could just fly between fighting styles. It was a huge help, and it was just so convenient just to do all that stuff so fast, and I loved it. And it was just night and day between this game and Yakuza 0. And honestly, by far, this game's combat is just, again, it's so good, it's so fast, and it's so fluent, and I love playing this game. This game and Yakuza 7 are probably my favorite Yakuza games to play, just by itself, because of how fun the games are. They're just so fun to play, and it's just amazing. Now, the other things are that I said were this game was an extreme copy-paste of Yakuza 0. Now, with that being said, this game came out in 2017 in the West, and I'm pretty sure in Japan as well. we didn't, in the West, didn't get Yakuza 6 until 2018. Now, this game was supposed to be like a substitute for that, which is why I'm pretty sure this is why this game came out in the first place, was in order for us to wait for a game like Yakuza 6. So this game was, they wanted to get this game out, basically. That's why they reused a lot of the same elements from Yakuza 0, because they were honestly just trying to get something out. But they also wanted something to have a base to recreate the first Yakuza game, especially for newcomers of the series. And, fun thing, you could start on either Yakuza 0 or Kiyomi. It doesn't matter either one you start on, it's still a starting point to the game. Because I know this is a huge debate in the Yakuza series, but honestly, it doesn't matter. You're still getting a feel for the start of the game, but in my personal opinion, I would recommend to start on 0. Because when you start on 0, and you see Majima and Kiryu at their starting point, you have a lot more connection with the character, and you just feel a lot more emotionally connected to the character when you play the later games, if you played 0 first. And it makes the whole thing, everything just makes a lot more sense, and everything feels a lot more completed if you play 0 first, in my opinion. Now, with all that being said, there are a lot of bad things about this game sometimes. There are sometimes the cutscenes. The cutscenes look really bad. They're not done really well. Another thing is Kiryu's model in this game is probably one of like the weirder Kiryu models. Not speaking about Yakuza 3 and 4, because Yakuza 3 and 4 Majima or Kiryu are just weird. But what I mean is Kiryu constantly, I know he usually does, but in this game he just constantly looks pissed, like all the time, and it's not really, it doesn't really make me as a player comfortable for like a character to look like that all the time, because he just constantly looks mad and unhappy with everything, and it's like it's just not really fitting. It doesn't really seem like welcoming as a player just to see a character stone-faced all the time, and that looks just so mad at the world. That and the cutscenes do look very poor. A lot of the things in this game are reused actually from Yakuza 0, which is understandable, but again, it's lazy. One of the first boss fights is Shimano, the Shimano family patriarch, in chapter 3. You fight him, and his fighting style, if you've played Yakuza 0, his fighting style is actually Mr. Shakedown's. So, and if you're acquainted with Mr. Shakedown's fighting style, then you will have no problem at all with Shimano. It is an extremely easy fight. Another thing about the boss fights, there is a certain boss fight in chapter, I want to say like 11. Horrible boss fight. It's a guy with 2 guns. Oh my god, that boss fight could not be worse. It's extremely hard. It's extremely hard to get hits off of the guy. He runs around, and then when you try to hit him, he just evades you, and he'll just shoot at you. And if you've played Yakuza, you know that getting shot in these games is not really a good thing, and it's highly annoying, especially the later games when you have to spam the A button to do it, and that's just annoying because it takes forever. And then once you get up, and if you get shot again, you have to do it all over again. That was my biggest complaint with Judgment. That game, Judgment, side rant. Judgment, a fantastic game, but you would have to constantly spam X to get up after getting knocked down or anything, and it would take a long time to get up, no matter how fast you spammed, and then you would get up, and then you could easily get knocked straight on your ass again, and then you would have to spam X again even longer, and it was just extremely tedious. And Yakuza 0 and Yakuza 0, I think I just said that twice, my bad. Yakuza Kiyomi and Yakuza 0 are big games of spamming A when it comes to getting shot at or getting tased. Extremely annoying, but it's just, I don't know. It's just really tedious, and it kind of brings down the game a lot. It kind of wastes time in combat when you're, especially since this game, I'm pushing it more towards fast-paced combat. Now, with that being good, having drawbacks like getting shot and then having to wait so much time just to get up, or getting stabbed, it really just slows everything down to like a screeching halt. It is really annoying, but I understand it since it's like a Yakuza game, so of course certain people are going to have guns. Now, other things I want to say is the antagonist and how I said Nishiki was a bad character. Now, Nishiki in this game is not a bad character. I want to just put that out there now. He was in Zero. In Zero, he was a whiny bitch. And that's a true statement. Excuse me for my language. I know that wasn't like very professional to say, since this is supposed to be serious. But he was whiny. He was very whiny in that game. But in Yakuza Kiwami, he's also whiny. But in this game, I honestly excuse it because in this game, what I really liked about this game is the extra cutscenes they added for Nishiki, which are phenomenal and such a great addition to the game. But the only problem I have with it is that they are dreadful to watch. Not because they're bad and not because the animation in them is bad or like the story in them is bad. It's dreadful and bad emotionally and mentally. Because you get to see the characters slowly just break, like, emotionally and mentally from being this goofy sworn brother character to being a tyrant in the Yakuza, to being money hungry and power hungry. He's just out of his mind. And then you just see him slowly get betrayed by peers and get backstabbed by even members of his own Yakuza family, and it breaks him down so much to the point where he even thinks of killing himself at some point. But then his one subordinate walks in and he kills him. Nishiki stabs him and kills him in cold blood. And that's Nishiki's boiling point to turn over to become something that he didn't want to become himself. Now, with all that being said, watching him break is it sucks to watch because it's just so painful, and seeing all of it happen is just, oh my god, it really sucks. And then you see the final battle, you just see him versus Kiryu, and you just know that between them there has to be one winner. And of course that one winner is Kiryu, of course, and it has to be for all the right reasons. Because Nishiki, all he wanted to do was be like Kiryu. And then while Kiryu was in jail, because the reason why Kiryu was in jail for this game, if no one knew that, he went to jail because he took the fall for Nishiki for killing their Kiryu's family patriarch, Sohei Dojima, because he forced his hands onto a very close friend of Kiryu's and Nishiki's. Her name is Yumi. She was very close, and Dojima forced himself onto her, and while Nishiki heard about this, he was there, and he flipped and lost himself, and he ended up shooting him twice. Kiryu, hearing about this, got there, and then Kiryu took the fall for him. Kiryu basically lost everything in his life. He lost his Yakuza rank, he lost his reputation, and it ruined him basically for the rest of his life. And it was painful to see him come back and just everything be so much different, for the year being 2005, him not being what he once used to be, and then coming encounter with an old Yakuza buddy, Majima. Now, with this transition, I will now talk about Goro Majima, the fan favorite Yakuza character. Now, to start this off, I would like to say and get my opinion out there. Majima is probably one of the worst characters in the Yakuza series. In my opinion, he isn't necessarily a bad character, but he isn't a good one either. Because he fails a lot in a lot of the games he's in, but he also excels in a few games that he's in. In Zero, he's solid and sophisticated and an extremely good character. And seeing his story is awesome. It's so good, and his fighting styles in that game were easily the best. And I'm also extremely biased. I'm extremely biased towards Kiryu, but when it comes to Yakuza 0, Majima really just hits home. And when it comes in terms of story, Majima has the more emotional story, in my opinion. They both have pretty emotional stories, but Majima's just sometimes hits a little deeper. Now, Majima in Yakuza Kiwami is a cluster fuck of horrible not goodness, because he, as a character in this game, fails a lot in multiple ways. One being, in the original Yakuza 1, Majima was an extremely unimportant character and had almost no screen time. But in Yakuza Kiwami, since this game is basically like a Zero predecessor, he was like a fan favorite, and the people at Sega noticed he was getting all this attention, and they wanted to give Majima more in this Yakuza game. But the thing they didn't realize was that was probably a huge mistake, but mainly to me, because what I think they did with Majima in this game was downright awful. They did him so dirty, in my opinion, making him the next raid boss in the area, and no pun intended, but he is literally everywhere. And when I say that, I literally mean he is everywhere. And it's so annoying to the point where it happens so much. It happens so much to the point where it literally gets annoying, and it makes me really want to stop playing the game. It gets really boring over time, and it's like a mini game that is so boring that, like, when you're 100% in completing, you're wishing it just wasn't in the game. Like, and you're just like, the game easily could have done without this. But Majima is constantly up your ass. He's everywhere, literally, and it's just annoying, and it gets tedious very easily. And then when you see him in the story after fighting him so many times out in the streets, after seeing him in the story, you're just like, oh, cool, you're here. Wow, I can't wait to fight you like I did 70 times before with this cutscene. And then when you fight him, it's another fight that you've already done 10 times before that same chapter. Or maybe 100 times before that same fight. Now, he extremely lacks in this game, and that's not necessarily his fault, but in my opinion, it's the fans' fault why Majima sucks so much in this game, because they liked him so much and gave him so much recognition because of Zero, that led the people who made Yakuza Kiwami, you know, Sega Team Yakuza, that kind of just led them to be like, they must like Majima, so let's make him extra in this game. And what sucks is, Majima is known for this persona he has called the Mad Dog of Shimano, because he's crazy and he's all bite and bark. You know, he barks and bites both. But the thing about that is, it also, in this game, I feel like they try way too much to show that Mad Dog persona of his, and they show it all right, but I feel like they're just way too extra with it, and it's really annoying to just constantly see Majima his character gets so old, and it honestly ruins the character for me, and it did, honestly, after I played this game. And then I went on to Kiwami 2, and Kiwami 2 is a perfect example of the Mad Dog persona, because it's the right amount of funniness. Majima is an extremely funny character in Kiwami 2, and it's a great show of Majima's persona and how he really can be, and how he really is as a character himself. Now, in Kiwami 2, as much as that is a Kiryu game, and as much as Majima is a side supporting main character in that game, he is also an extremely good character in that game, being extremely funny, being Majima, and having an amazing fight in that game. It only being one fight, but it being a fight. And every time Majima's on screen, it's always such a pleasure seeing him on screen, because he always brings something funny to the table, or he shows a really good display of his character in a really good way. Like, Yakuza Kiwami 2 is a perfect example of how to do Majima correctly. Now, a game like Yakuza Kiwami is an awful way to show how Majima can be, because this game kind of just wants to shove in your face, this is how Majima is, so get used to it. Because they shove it in your face so much that if you didn't really grow up with the Yakuza games and you're just getting into it, and this is either your first Yakuza game or your second Yakuza game, then you know that Majima is, you know, this certain character that you once knew was solid and very sophisticated and serious all the time, but now he's goofy and quirky all the time, and he's super annoying and he's just up your ass constantly. The problem with that being in this game is that they try and put that out so much that it ruins Majima as a character for the rest. Now, like I said, it didn't ruin that for me for Kiyomi 2, because I was more than willing to give Yakuza, not Yakuza, Majima as a character another chance, which I did. Most certainly, which I did. He really helped. His character in Kiyomi 2 really helped him bring back more likeness, for me, for Majima as a player. But the other thing about that is, too, like Yakuza 3, 4, and 5, Majima in those games, not a good character at all. And now I get to address this. Someone did mention that, I will put up the comment on screen, they mentioned that the reason why Majima's like that in those games, which I know all well, I've played the games multiple times, that the Mad Dog is a persona, so it's not really who he is, but it's like, it's just, of course he's going to be all so serious because he's not always the Mad Dog. Sometimes he has to be suited up, serious Majima. And I understand that fully. And I don't, what that person I think didn't understand really coming from me was, once you play Zero, Kiyomi, and then Kiyomi 2, you are so used to this one specific Majima because he's so jumpy and he's so crazy and he's so funny and he's so, you know, quick and agile. He's still quick and agile, but the thing is, he's not funny in 3. He's not his old character in 3. He's extremely different than he has been the entire series. He wasn't like Yakuza 0 serious. He was like very upfront, serious, took like the Yakuza business seriously, even though Majima usually is the one to kind of like shit on that stuff and be like, yeah, I'm in the Yakuza, but I'm only in it to fuck around. Majima doesn't really show that in Yakuza 3. He kind of just like takes it very seriously to the point where like it's extremely weird. And I don't really personally like that. And I said that in my video. I don't think I explained it elaborately enough, but I said it, and I said how much I didn't like that. And that probably set a lot of people off because they're probably like, oh, but Majima's not always supposed to be so crazy and stupid all the time. And now I realize that. But what I also realized is that after you're so used to one character and how he acts all the time, you finally understand that you want him one way and people want him another. I want Majima to be just like he was in Kiyomi 2 and in Yakuza 7, for an instance. Majima is not in Yakuza 7 that long, but when he is, he's extremely funny and a really good character, actually. And another thing, which I really find funny, is, little side note, is that if you've seen anything of Yakuza 7, you will know that Majima is voiced by the dub voice actor of Jotaro Kujo from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Matthew Mercer, which is one of my personal favorite voice actors, which I find very funny because the English voice actor for Jotaro is in Yakuza, and so is the Japanese voice actor for Dio. He actually plays, this goes back to my Yakuza Kiyomi 2 point, Majima has a mini side story in that game called Majima Saga that further explains his story and who he is in that game. And that is a perfect display of more Majima, and it's amazing. More Majima content, hell yeah. And of course, it's one of the better Majimas in the series. I'm saying that like there's different Majimas. It's him being so different in the other games makes it feel like it's a different Majima. But the Japanese voice actor for Dio is actually in this Majima Saga. He actually voices the character, and I'll play a small clip of that right now. Now, with that being said, he's a funny character in Yakuza 7, and he's the Mad Dog in Yakuza 7, the character everyone knows him as. But what's weird is Majima really likes to go back and forth with this Mad Dog bullshit, which is extremely annoying, and it feels like it's almost like a bipolar disorder. Like, one time he wants to be crazy and eccentric, but other times he wants to be serious and super, like, business and super Yakuza informative, and it's really just, it just doesn't really connect well with his character, especially knowing how he's supposed to be, and then seeing him be like, I am Majima, I'm very serious, to being like, oh, I'm Majima, Q-chan. It's like, wow, this is, it's just a weird change of pace that it makes no sense. Now, Majima in no way is a bad character, but he is bad in a lot of aspects. Now, the reason why he's bad in Yakuza 4 and 5 is because he's only there for Saejima, which really drags Saejima down as a character. I personally love Saejima a lot, because Saejima is an extremely enjoyable character, actually, and he is for all the right reasons. But he also isn't for all the wrong reasons, because he's Saejima's sworn brother. Not Saejima. He's Majima's sworn brother, and it really, him being Majima's sworn brother really puts him down as a character, because all of his spotlight isn't based around Saejima. All of his spotlight is based around Majima, which is extremely annoying. And the entire time in both games, Yakuza 4 and 5, he's searching for Majima, and he's searching for the truth about something about Majima, or like, oh, spoilers for Yakuza 4 and 5, oh, why did Majima not come with me to shoot up that ramen shop? Or, oh, how did Majima really die? And it's just all extremely annoying and confusing, and I don't really enjoy it at all. And it just really brings Saejima down as a character, and it's honestly not his fault at all. It's his sworn brother being Majima. And Majima in 4 and 5 is not good, and whenever he's on screen, it's really dumb. And he barely gets any screen time in those games, and when he does, he uses it horribly. And the only reason why I'm not talking about Yakuza 6 is because Majima is barely in Yakuza 6, being that he, in Yakuza 6, he's in the intro cutscene and the epilogue cutscene. And he's in, like, one other thing in Yakuza 6, but other than that, in the entirety of the game's story, Majima is not in the game. So I'm not talking about that, especially because of that reason. But that being said, Majima, with the games he's in, he proves to be worthy of a good character in some aspects most of the time. But again, I only say that for 2-3 games alone. Those 3 games being Yakuza 0, Yakuza Kiwami 2, and Yakuza 7. Because those are the best Majimas. Yakuza Kiwami is easily the worst Majima next to Yakuza 3, and it's just the truth. Majima sucks in this game. His character, it just gets so annoying, it drags on. The Majima Everywhere system is probably the stupidest thing in the Yakuza series, in my opinion. And it's so dragged out over so much time that when you fight Majima so much, every fight is just the same. It's boring, it lags on, and and whatsoever, just not really fun. It's just not fun. And then constantly having to see him and constantly having to fight him with the same fighting styles, you just get so used to it over time. It's that when you fight him in the game, in the story, when he's using that same fighting style you just use on him, it's like, I literally know how to beat you. This is literally nothing to me. And it just sucks. It lacks. It doesn't help Majima at all as a character, and it doesn't really help me as a Yakuza fan to like the character any more than, or any less. Now, I'm not talking about Majima for now. But before I do go on to my next topic, I hope this doesn't. I'm saying all this to be an eye-opener for certain Majima fans or certain Yakuza enjoyers. I'm just trying to let it out there that Majima isn't the best character in the series, and that's a proven fact. And the reason why some people like him a lot, in my opinion, I feel like, is because he's so unique And he's such his own character that even when he is on screen, people really value his time. And I feel like that's why some people really like him a lot, is because he's not really like such a main character where he's constantly on screen, but he's always in the background. But whenever he's on screen, people think he makes a really big impact. And that sometimes can be extremely true. And with that being said, what I just said, a really good example of a game for that would be Yakuza Kiwami 2. He's not in a lot of the game, but when he is in the game, he's an amazing, fantastic character. And I love that about him. But when you have a game like Yakuza 3, that he's barely in, and whenever he's on screen, and he still fails to be a good character, you see a lot of drawback, and you start to dislike the character a lot for who he is and how he acts. And that's the same for other games that he's in, like 4 and 5. Now, I'm basically just saying this to address a point. This is entirely opinion-based. You can think whatever you want on Majima. I'm not trying to get people to hate Majima. I'm just trying to open people's eyes. I'm just trying to base my opinion and clear things up from my tier list video, because someone addressed how I explained Majima and how he was. Now, I want to move on to another topic about a comment that I'll show on screen right now, that he said to get actually good at Yakuza 3, because I was talking about Yakuza 3 at the time, and I don't really agree with that statement. And to that person, if you are watching this, I don't agree with you and your statement. I don't really think you explained well enough, and I don't really think you have a lot of information on like what you're trying to explain. You're probably a good person. You probably are a really good Yakuza fan. You probably have really good opinions on the game. But to say to me, after I explained Yakuza 3's combat and how it's bad, and how you pointed out the clip I showed and how it didn't really show a good bit of like how Yakuza's gameplay can really be, you're wrong. You're wrong. I know it's an opinion, but I feel like you are wrong. And this reason being because the video I showed when I was talking about Yakuza 3 was a perfect example of how the combat is in the game, because that's exactly how the combat is in the game. You deal with constant blocking from enemies and almost barely any combos, and draining health is extremely tedious. The game, Yakuza 3 itself, is an extremely tedious game, and it's not fun. The gameplay is awful. The only thing that holds up Yakuza 3 till this day is most likely the story after the first 3 chapters, because the first 3 chapters are extremely boring. They feel like filler, but they might be boring and they might feel like filler, but they're there for a good reason, because they're supposed to be. They're meant to be filler, you know? They're meant to be like, oh, this is Kiryu and this is his life now. He's taking care of an orphanage. Okay, that makes perfect sense. And then the first 3 chapters, you know, he goes throughout Okinawa. Sorry. He goes through Okinawa, and, you know, he deals with a small Yakuza family in Okinawa, but he also deals with an orphanage. And it's all really cutesy, filler, beachy stuff, and it's all family related. And it's like, oh, this is Kiryu now. Get used to him. And it's like, okay, I guess that's cool. But it's a really big change of pace when it comes to games like Yakuza, because you expect crime and shooting people and Kiryu beating up and brooding men beating up each other. But then you really get to see Kiryu being Kiryu outside of the Yakuza organization and stuff like that. But with that being said, Yakuza 3 is not a good game. And what this person said is to get good at Yakuza 3, because the clip I showed didn't really show a good display of the gameplay, but it did. It full well did, because that's what you get when you play Yakuza 3. And saying to get good at Yakuza is just a statement that makes no sense to begin with, because in a game like Yakuza, I feel like you can't necessarily be good at. Because what I feel like this guy's coming from is that Yakuza is that kind of game, when he says get good at, is that, oh, Yakuza is a traditional fighting game, and you can get good at it by learning new combos and stuff. But the thing is, Yakuza is not a fighting game. It's a beat-em-up game. there are fights in it, but it's not like your typical Mortal Kombat or your typical Guilty Gear or Tekken or Marvel vs. Capcom. Now, it's very interesting when you have to like play these games and you see that they're not traditional fighting games because they have set fighting styles and they always have automatic combos for you that you can, you know, use in your own ways and use differently to your own personal like mind or your own creativity. You can't necessarily get good at Yakuza because everything is there already for you. So I don't really know what getting good at Yakuza would look like. I guess I could say I'm good at Yakuza, if that makes any sense. But I'm not necessarily good at Yakuza. I just understand how to play the game. That's basically what it is. You just have to understand how to play the game. And once you have a feel for it and you've played it a bunch and you fully well know what you're doing and you have a good like understanding on how the game works, you can experiment and test from there. Because that's what Yakuza wants you to do. That's why it gives you all these skills to upgrade the fighting styles and upgrade like transitioning through them. It's not to make you get good at the game. It's trying to show you that there's more than just what's there that you start with. That there is improvement to be shown and there's improvement to be given. Now, you can't necessarily get good at Yakuza, and that's a true statement because you can't. You can get I don't really know how to put this in words, honestly. You can't get good at Yakuza, but you can get good at Yakuza, if that makes any sense at all. Because you can't necessarily get good in the essence of fighting, but you can get skilled and you can get experience with it, especially being a Yakuza fan like myself who's played this game several times. You know how the fighting's going to be, and you learn over time how to use the combos differently or how to play differently by a little bit and using the fighting styles to your advantage in certain ways by switching back and forth between them and using them to your advantage and stuff like that. I understand that. And that, honestly, is a good way to show how you can be good at the game by showing how you can use the combos to your own will and how you don't use the combos how they're intended in the game or how the fighting styles are intended in this game. Like, I've watched people do really well with certain fighting styles in Yakuza games that not even a game developer for this game or a playtester would be like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this, and then they do that, and then they'd be like, all right, we're gonna have this be a part of the fighting style. Each fighting style has a select amount of moves and a select amount of combos. Now, with these moves, you can make your own combos out of them, which are extremely interesting, and you can connect combos with different fighting styles or the same fighting style and make it all very, very interesting and make combat a lot more fun and a lot more to do with it, which I also love about the Yakuza games, because every game is except for when you start with 0 and Kiyomi, the fighting styles are the exact same. But when you get to a game like Kiyomi 2, and then 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7, etc., all the fighting styles are different, and they're cool in their own way, and stuff like that. And it's also interesting. But Yakuza 3 is where it lacks most when it comes to fighting, because in Yakuza 3, the game itself, it coming out in 2009, it being the first mainline Yakuza game to come out on PlayStation 3, but not the first Yakuza game to come out on PlayStation 3. That game being Yakuza Kenzan, which also ran on the Yakuza 3 engine and looked just as awful, even a little worse. Yakuza 3, for the time, coming out in 2009, did not look that good. And you guys are probably like, if anyone watches this who are Yakuza fans, and be like, oh, but it was 2009, you can't expect that much. Actually, I can. Because a lot of games that came out around that time looked and played a hell of a lot better than Yakuza 3 did. And that's a true fact. Especially games that came before it played a lot better and were extremely interesting and looked a lot better. A game, for example, are various Nintendo games. And even a game like Resident Evil 4, that game was phenomenal. It looked great and it played really well. And then you had a game like Yakuza 3, which didn't look that great and didn't play all that well either, because the combat in a game like Yakuza, you want the combat to be fast-paced and you know you want to be able to hit the enemies and get some hits off and beat the shit out of them and get some combos down. But in Yakuza 3, you don't necessarily get combos down because the enemies are always constantly blocking your attacks. There's not really enough time to get a full combo in. The only time you can really get damage down is if you throw them, or if you get lucky by hitting them and getting a combo on them, or if you unlock the skill to get the the double finisher blow, which if you do, I think it's 3 base hits, and then it's either 2 or 3 base hits and then the double finisher, and it's so I think square, 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 and then triangle, triangle. If you do that, you can get a sliver of health off, and it's makes the gameplay and the game extremely tedious, and it makes the story extremely boring, and it drags it down a lot. And that's a true fact. And I've played through the game almost 3 times, and yeah, that's ironic. Being the 3rd game, I've almost played it 3 times. But it's true. The fighting, it's the same. And with a game like Yakuza 3, you can't necessarily get good at the fighting. It's just not a game you can necessarily be good at. Especially Yakuza as a game itself is not a game you can necessarily get good at. But you can get skilled and you can get experience with the fighting, which you can get better with. But you can't necessarily be good at this game. Being good at a fighting game, like per se Mortal Kombat, being good at that game means you know all the characters' combos, you're really good with the combos, you can connect a lot of their moves together into your own personal combos, and they're not all set out for you. Like, you can't press the X button a certain amount of times and the combo is made for you. In Yakuza, it's like that. The combos are already made for you because that's just how these games are. They're not supposed to, the fighting is different. It's not supposed to be your traditional fighting game. Yakuza is trying to be its own element, like as itself, and not be your typical beat 'em up game. Yakuza does extremely well on being its own presence as a game and as a fighting game, or a beat 'em up for that instance. Not necessarily a fighting game. A fighting game would be like games like Tekken or Mortal Kombat or Smash Brothers for that instance. But you can't be so used to those games and then hop into Yakuza and then think Yakuza is going to be the same thing, because, you know, newsflash, it's not going to be anything like those games. Now, I just want to say that Yakuza 3 is not a good game in my opinion. It lacks heavily in a lot of the departments except for story. In the story, it excels very far, and I think it's a really good story-wise game. Fighting-wise and pacing-wise, not the best, and a lot of the characters in the story are extremely forgettable and not like used again at all, and they fall flat easily, and that also drags the game down a lot. And having characters like Kiryu and Majima in that game, you really get to see how much the game is just not good, and it shows a lot, and it's sad, especially for people who, you know, think the game is good, even though there are a lot of people who don't. I've met a lot of people who also agree with me that Yakuza 3 is the worst, but they also have the same opinion I do. It's the story that keeps the game up, because it's true, the story of the game really holds the game up, but everything else really drags it down, and that's a bummer for the game being in such a great game series, but not being that great of a game. Now, comparing Yakuza 3 to 4, it being on the same engine, but introducing multiple characters, it has, you know, different fighting styles, but split between 4 different characters. Now, Kiryu in that game has the same exact fighting style, but the fighting in Yakuza 4 is so much better, it's so much faster, and so much more fluent, and it's done really well. And it's a huge upgrade if you're after playing a game like Yakuza 3. And it's a really good breath of fresh air to finally do some actual fighting instead of having to deal with an enemy blocking 24/7 and you not being able to get anywhere because you're too busy waiting for an enemy to stop blocking constantly. Now, with all of this said, I would just like to get it out there to clear everything up on my 3 main topics. Yakuza Kiwami is not a bad game. Yakuza Kiwami is an extremely fun game and done really well. Now, Yakuza 3, a really bad game and done very poorly. I really hope they do something else with this game in the future. Maybe if they remade it, that would be perfect. And they gave it what the game deserved, because the story is really good, but having a game like Yakuza 3, having gameplay like a game like Yakuza 3, but having a story as amazing as Yakuza 7, like Yakuza 3 does, it sucks. And it really holds the game down. And I feel like if the game got a remake in the Dragon engine and it made the game so much better, I feel like the game has a really big chance to stand on its own for once and to be not the joke and not the odd one out in the Yakuza series. And I feel like it might have a really good chance of being one of the greats and being one of the better games in the series, being, you know, like Yakuza 0, 6, or 7, in my opinion. Now, my opinion on Majima will stay the same and will always stay the same. But I do understand where people come from when they say they do like Majima, and I get that. But I'm also biased towards characters that are like Kiryu, who are automatically strong, who are bigger, who are masculine, and really don't show a lot of emotion and are serious all the time and are extremely badass. I'm extremely biased towards characters like this. That's why, my favorite character in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is Jotaro Kujo, because I like how his character is. A lot of people don't like Jotaro because of that, because they find him boring. They don't really find his character to be too jumpy, too eccentric, and he seems really boring because he's just this cool guy the whole time. He's not your typical, you know, Joseph Joestar who's always funny and cracking jokes all the time, which I love Joseph Joestar, but I like Jotaro a little more because I love badass characters that are like that all the time. Because even though a lot of people find that boring, that's their personality, and they're supposed to be like that. That's why I like Kiryu so much, is because that's just the type of guy Kiryu is. He's straightforward, he's serious, and he gets shit done when he needs to. And he shows emotion a lot of the times too. Like, he's not always serious and, you know, brooding all the time, but he also shows a lot of emotion and is a very emotional person when certain, like, events happen in his life, which are very good for his character, in my opinion. And it's not like, you know, comparing Kiryu to Majima, it's literally, when I say this, it's literally night and day, because they are two extremely different characters. And that's why I feel like Majima is a fan favorite, is because he is the day while Kiryu is the night. Because Majima's happy, he's funny, he's jumpy, he's always hyped up. And Kiryu, even though not knowing if he's really hyped up or not, he is the night. I'm not trying to like make a Batman pun or anything, but he is the dark. He's more straightforward. He's serious. He's not really always happy and jumpy and excited all the time, but he's a very serious, calm, and straightforward person. And that's just who he is. That's his whole personality, and that makes a lot of sense, especially for what this guy goes through. He doesn't really necessarily have a lot of time to be happy, and when he does, he tries his best, and when he does, he actually does it very well. Especially, and Yakuza 3 is a great example of this, because he tries to show how he can be this family man and how he can actually be happy and how he shows his life off. Now, with all this being said, this is all my opinion. I honestly really just wanted to address on certain things and get a lot of things out of the water and just talk about this. And I thought this was also a very good video idea. But yeah, that's my opinion on everything. I just wanted to clear things up, and I just wanted to set some things straight. I really do hope you guys enjoyed this video. I really hope this might have opened your guys' eyes on certain things. And if not, and if you think differently, please comment down below. Tell me what you thought differently. And we can have a conversation on it. But with all that said, I really do hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.